This is the Weekly Set, the official podcast of TheTotalScreen.com. Episode 163, recorded July 5th, 2018. Hello everybody and welcome to the Weekly Set, the official podcast of The Total Screen. I am your host, Tyson, and joining me today, as always, is my partner in crime here at The Total Screen, William Rohrig.
Hello.
So, today we are going to be talking about Luke Cage Season 2. That's all we're going to be talking about. We're just going to be talking about Luke Cage Season 2, our thoughts about it. We're going to be comparing it a little bit to Season 1, talking about kind of some things that happen. We're not going to be breaking down the entire series like we would episode by episode and some other ones, because we're covering the whole thing in this one podcast.
We would be here all night if we did that.
Yeah. So. This is our 10-hour Luke Cage podcast.
Yeah.
But like right off the bat, whenever we're doing something like this, where it's like a broader thing, I just like to say, Will, what are your just like right off the surface like reactions without going into too much depth?
Surface reactions, I loved it. I thought this was much better season than season 1. This was
certainly didn't tail dive.
It did not. No, that's what it was solid throughout, right? It held steady instead of like being strong and then like it held throughout, which, like some of the Netflix like Marvel shows were guilty of tail diving. Luke Cage season 1 being the most infamous, just because like of the abrupt villain switch and the second villain being like so goofy, like so corny.
It's a Looney Tunes character.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Wile E. Coyote on Luke Cage.
But no, that didn't happen this season. So it's clear that, to me, that the writers took the feedback and they listened and they rectified it.
Let's start with let's kind of go through a few things here. One right off the bat I'm going to bring up is the Judith bullet, which was a big part of season 1. I always hated the Judith bullet. I thought that was so forced. I thought there were so many more interesting ways they could have shown to like show how Luke Cage could take damage or how he could be hurt. And it's funny because they had Mariah like basically list off like everything I had said in the podcast before. Like when we talked about Luke Cage season 1, basically my point with the Judith bullet was like, there's so many ways you can kill somebody who's bulletproof that would have been much more interesting to like that for them to have been plotting against him with than what they ended up doing with this Judith bullet. It's like, oh, he's bulletproof except this bullet,
Yeah, I think it was symbolically like they acknowledged it was goofy, and it was symbolically they were casting off the bad parts of season 1, saying, kind of. I thought like him suddenly being immune to Judas bullets was a bit of an ass pull. That like they just came.
It kind of makes sense though, because they're basically he hasn't gotten shot with one since he had that moment in season 1 where
I get they could make sense, but it was obviously an ass pull.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was kind of like almost like a retcon against that.
Yeah, it was almost a retcon, but I didn't mind it because good.
Yeah.
Let's not.
The ends justified the means.
Yeah, the ends justify the means. And again, you said there's so many much more interesting ways they could hurt him, and they do that this season, like. Not
only did they do that, but like I said, like, I loved Mariah basically talking to Luke Cage and saying, how long I fantasized about how many ways I could kill you. I could drown you. I could suffocate you. Like, going through, and that's basically what I said. Like I said, like the last time when we talked about Luke Cage season 1, that's what I was saying. I'm like, he could have tried to drown him. He could have suffocate him. He could have tried to do this or that, He could have poisoned him. He could have, like saying all these things that they could have done. And she just like basically cited them all off, which I thought was really cool because it was like acknowledging that like the Judith bolt was kind of an unnecessary gimmick that they had put into it.
One of the things that this season confirmed is that Luke Cage can be interesting without Cottonmouth. I know there was a real concern from last season after Cottonmouth died, and they brought in Diamond back. Some people were worried, like, that this was going to be like Jessica Jones, where a lot of the feeling is Jessica Jones without Kilgrave just wasn't as interesting. And Jessica Jones even, like, seemed to acknowledge that by bringing Kilgrave back for an entire episode.
Yeah.
But Luke Cage proves that Luke Cage doesn't need Cottonmouth because they came out, first of all, they made Mariah much more interesting, much of a better villain than in season 1. Well, they did everybody better than season 1. Even Shades was a huge improvement over season 1 Shades. Like, they gave these people, like, these characters more depth and nuance, like,
he gave them points of conflict and personal conflict and stuff.
Yeah, they gave him personal conflict. Yeah, which was lacking in season 1. Shades was just like, he was a mob goon, like, and this season gave him a personality. Like, damn. The same thing with and also like the new villain, Bushmaster. Again,
I love Bushmaster. He's the most sympathetic. Like people talk about, was it Killmonger and Black Panther? But to me, Bushmaster is the most sympathetic villain they've had in the MCU.
Oh yeah,
if count this or not, I was totally on board with everything he wanted to do. Outside of like killing innocents along the way, but
killing innocents along the way. But like yeah, he's sympathetic because he wants revenge. He wants revenge for the murder of his his family members. And he wants to kill Mariah, and Mariah comes to show like there's nothing sympathetic about her at the end of the day. So she's just an evil monster, right? And I love
they gave you a point of sympathy, but they also made that like a breaking point. Like basically they said there was a point of sympathy for Mariah and something horrible happened to her, and that broke it. That broke it for her. It made her no longer able to be a sympathetic character, not because like this horrible thing happened to her, like stained her or something like that, like some kind of a cultural way, but like she was so fundamentally broken because of what happened that she's like she made herself irredeemable.
Yeah, she made herself irredeemable. Exactly. And and even like there's points where like even Luke Cage acknowledges several points that he should just let Bushmaster kill her,
Yeah.
Yeah, even Luke Cage is like, I should just let you two kill each other so I could get a damn night's rest.
Yeah. I really, like I said though, I really dug Bushmaster. I like that character.
I love that character. He was awesome.
I thought he was a bit like when they showed the trailer and they showed him kind of kicking Luke Cage, I was like, he's kind of a MacGuffin character, he can hurt Luke Cage and stuff. But then when you actually watch the show, it's like, yeah.
I thought he was going to be like a total cornball villain, like another like Diamondback, like, oh, he's the guy with powers and can beat up Luke Cage and he's probably going to be corny as hell. And no, he wasn't. Like, I'm glad because he could have easily been another Diamondback if they wrote him the wrong way.
I also like that they ended his story.
Yeah.
Like they didn't kill him. They just ended his story. Like
well, Mariah died, and he had no reason to stick around after that, so he left. Yeah, that's all he wanted.
He took what remained of his family, and that the people they cared about, and they left, and they're just like, this is it. We're out of here.
Well, yeah, it got resolved. That's literally all he wanted was for Mariah to be dead. So when she died,
well, more than dead, he wanted her to take everything from her and stuff. But I mean, at this point, there's nothing to take.
There was nothing to take at that point. He got everything he wanted. There was no point for him to stick around. So at that point, that was cool how they resolved that.
Let's talk about the dark spark in Mariah's past that they used, because we brought up the fact that they had brought it up as a like horrible thing, a sympathetic thing that happened to her, but then she chose like an irredeemable path because of that.
Yeah, she chose.
But we didn't talk about what the thing itself was.
She was raped.
They talked about Pistol Pete in the first season.
Yeah, Pistol
There are
Pete.
even flashbacks with him in it and stuff. And then we find out now, she was raped by her uncle, impregnated by her uncle.
Yeah, she has a daughter by her uncle.
A product of incest. And I think what was interesting here is that it's like, what are they going to go with here? Because at first they kind of introduced her back into the fold with Mariah, because it was all about like Mariah, like wanting to use a relationship with her daughter as a means to get political sympathy.
This season was more about Mariah than it was Luke Cage, to be honest. Yeah. Luke Cage is kind of like a bystander in this season,
But Mariah wanted to use her daughter, like basically on the advice of her assistant, that she needed to use her daughter to create some kind of political sympathy. Like a reunion with her daughter would politically sway well. So she seeks out her daughter, and there's like a troubled relationship, and we know ahead of time that that Mariah's using it just to kind of leverage like this political victory out of it.
Well, she was
that the daughter's not quite trusting her mom on it, but like, saying, "Oh, what the hell? I'll give it a shot," kind of thing.
You gotta realize at that point she doesn't even really know. She has no idea what exactly her mother is.
Yeah, and we don't, and we don't even, as the audience, know the story of her daughter, like where her daughter came from.
We don't know the story of her daughter, where her daughter came from. No, we don't know the full story. But as far as
for us, we're completely like, man, what a bitch Mariah is that she's like gave away her daughter and never trusted it. And then we start to kind of see some dark hints, like some hints towards the fact that there's something about her daughter that Mariah doesn't want her daughter to know. And then you're like, okay, so something went on here.
Well, we find out that her supposed father isn't her father, and that's a secret that Mariah wants to keep. Which, when it comes down to it, is she tells the truth to her daughter
in a really callous and cold way.
In a really
she's just kind of done pretending, and she just kind of like says like, "Well, I don't give a shit. I never loved you.
That's
I tried, and it didn't. I tried to love you. It didn't work. I just
that's the scene where you see Mariah fully turn.
Yeah, where she just becomes irredeemable. Exactly.
Yeah, it's that scene where she just becomes irredeemable, because the next thing she does after that is she murders Bushmaster's family.
She murders Bushmaster's family. She starts turning on all of her own people.
Yeah,
they made a big point for the daughter before it was even revealed to the daughter. A big thing for her was just that Mariah had killed Alex, who was Mariah's assistant.
Yeah.
Who we'd seen since episode 1 is kind of like her non-crime assistant, like the one that's not really involved in her criminal stuff, but more.
No, he was involved with her political stuff. Her political career he was involved with.
And he had come into Mariah's daughter's work basically begging to be helped. And then she saw him dead.
Yeah, she turns him away, and then she finds him dead right after she turned him away, Yeah. And again, they do like such good things. Like the relationship between Mariah and Shades. You tell like Shades is very much in love with Mariah, but after the murder of Bushmaster's family, Shades starts to see Mariah for what she really is, and he starts to have huge second thoughts about her,
Yeah.
He's not comfortable with what went down. Like
she's out of control. Basically he has the same opinion about her that he had about Cottonmouth in the first season.
Right.
Cottonmouth's obsession with Luke Cage was going to take everybody down, and so he needed to go.
Yeah, and Shades was going to take him out.
He went to kill him and ended up seeing Mariah kill him instead.
Right.
In that instance. So this is basically what Shades comes to, but he can't kill her. He just can't do that. So he turns traitor.
Yeah, he turns traitor. He turns himself in to the cops and he rats her out.
Yeah. He basically tells like the entire backstory of his and her relationship and everything he did under Cottonmouth. They recap like basically his entire part of the entire Luke Cage story.
Yes.
They go over to like the absolute disgust of like even his own lawyer and other people that are there.
Yeah, to like the absolute disgust of everybody like he's involved with. Shades really got an upgrade. He had a really emotional journey like this season because
we got to see a past relationship, another one that he cared about almost probably as much as the relationship he was building with Mariah, which is his relationship with Comanche.
Yeah, his relationship with Comanche. He was his best friend. They were in Rikers Island together.
Oh no, it's at Seagate prison. The same.
No, that's Seagate. Yeah, they were at Seagate together. They were the ones who jumped Luke Cage in prison. Together.
Mm-hmm. And here you find out that their relationship wasn't as simple as just like comrades or like longtime friends.
No, they were like, well, it's revealed that they've been friends since they were children.
Mm-hmm.
So they've been together since they were children, and it was really like Comanche stood up for Shades when he was a kid, protected him from bullies and shit. So
what went beyond that too, which is that while they
became like brothers.
Well, while they were in Seagate, it wasn't brotherly.
Right.
It was revealed that while they were in Seagate, they had like a gay relationship.
Oh yeah.
It seems like after that, or even before that, Comanche is basically full on, he loves Shades.
Right.
Whereas Shades is still kind of like ashamed of his behavior. He's still kind of closeted about it. Like, he kind of sees it as something that happened in Seagate. It happened in Seagate, it stays in Seagate, kind of. That's how Shades kind of sees it.
It's just prison sex, right?
Yeah, but you can tell it's a little bit more than that. You can tell that, but he's not willing to admit it.
That's probably how Shades was rationalizing it to himself, right? right?
Yes, exactly.
Oh, yeah. But, but yeah, it's a little bit, there was definitely a romantic relationship there. And what makes it worse is that, what complicates things is that Comanche decides to snitch, right?
Yeah.
He turns into a witness for the police chief.
With the intent to not just free himself, but to free Shades.
Right.
It's kind of a trope you see like in movies where like the lover that's misguided that like says, we'll just rat out our partner and the two of us, we can take off. We can be on an island drinking margaritas, And the other one kind of sees the fuller picture and knows that that's not going to happen,
Right, exactly.
And so Shades is forced at that point to kill Comanche.
Yeah, Comanche kills the police chief, and Shades kills Comanche. Shades tries to frame it so that it looks like the police chief managed to kill Comanche, but Shades lets his feelings overwhelm him, and he shoots Comanche one more time for killing blow. Which
at closer range,
which destroys any cover he was trying to set up there. Yeah.
So you can't. He ruins his carefully plotted cover because he can't watch Comanche die slowly.
Yeah.
So that's Shades and Comanche, their storyline there. That was kind of interesting.
Let's talk about Luke Cage.
Yeah, let's talk about Cage and his kind of stuff that's kind of mostly in the beginning part before kind of Raya's story kind of takes over.
We see that Cage is like dealing with some anger issues this season, right? He's much more raw. He's much more quick-tempered, this season. Like, something is clearly bothering him. Like, and
he's got his three allies, basically, which is Bobby Fish, who's his, Pops from Pop's Barber's, like, friend that was in the barbershop with him.
He's in the barbershop. He has his girlfriend Claire.
Yes.
He has Misty,
Well, I was going to say his third ally was because Misty's there too, but she's kind of going through her own shit with her arm.
Yeah, she's going through her own shit too.
The other one that's there for him is D.W. Griffith.
And D.W., yeah.
I don't know if you noticed. Do you know D.W. Griffith that's actually the name of like a really famous filmmaker?
Yeah, I think so.
He's a really famous like early filmmaker, but he's also known as like a really racist filmmaker. he established a lot of the traits of filmmaking that are used to this day, like the way you start a scene by showing like a zoomed out establishing shot to show location, and then you cut in closer and you go back and forth between characters, and then you cut in even closer to like finer details. Like that whole structure was created by D.W. Griffith. But his like magnum opus, the thing that kind of like brought all of that together, was a movie called I can't even think of it right now. But it was a very racist movie. It was
Are you talking about like Birth of a Nation?
Yes.
Okay.
It was Birth of a Nation, and it was basically about like glorifying the Ku Klux Klan.
Oh, so that was the Birth of a Nation guy. Okay.
Yeah, so that's D.W. Griffith. So I just think it's interesting that like, because they do that in a lot of shows where like they have a character that's really interested in movies. Like they did it in Lethal Weapon. I don't know if you've watched the TV show version, but the guy that's like the coroner, the investigator that does the science, at their unit, they always call him, I think they call him Scorsese or something, just because he's all obsessed with film. And so they do it kind of like to make fun of him. So I just think it's kind of interesting that they did this with this character who's like always shooting videos and stuff. He's like the filmmaker of the group, but it's D.W. Griffith, who is this like very racist filmmaker. So it's almost like claiming back in a way. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I just thought that was interesting. That my filmmaker perspective found that very interesting.
Okay. I never made the connection, but all right.
I don't think most people would. It's these kind of, unless you're really into film history, you're probably not going to.
I've heard of the film.
Yeah. But even that, if you ask like 100 people out on the streets, probably like 2 or 3 of them have heard of that film.
Yeah, I know.
But yeah, so like, I thought that was kind of interesting. And so that's the relationship you have with the barbershop though. Claire's a little bit outside of that. She drops by the barbershop sometimes, but it's mostly Bobby Fish and D.W. And they're kind of acting as kind of like Bobby Fish is the one that's kind of trying to calm him down and take stuff off his plate. And D.W. Griffith is kind of like the guy that's saying, you could have more and still be righteous.
Right.
And then you have Claire as the one that's saying, like, you need to think about yourself and your own development. And the wrinkle you have with all of that is Luke's father, James Lucas.
Luke's father comes back into the picture. much to Luke's displeasure because there was after Luke Cage went to prison, his father basically disowned him.
Yeah, his father didn't believe him.
Yeah, his father
took his mother away and wouldn't even let her visit him again.
And then she died.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of animosity there that Luke holds for his dad.
And that's a big part of it. Like you said, Luke's got a chip on his shoulder in this season. He's really angry, and they're playing with the idea that this kind of the origin of this anger is his relationship with his father. And there's other things that are causing it. The fact that he's frustrated that he can't seem to make the mark he wants to. Like he goes in, he breaks up like crime, he does all this stuff. I mean, he makes the point that like, you guys, you can't succeed while I'm here, and yet it's not even making a dent in the crime that's going on in Harlem. It's just continuing on as if he was never there.
Right.
And so like that frustration is kind of mounting on top of this chip on his shoulder he's had all along about his father, but that they're expressing more in this season than they had before. So his relationship with Claire, which I really, I'm kind of, I don't know about you, but with the whole like Netflix cinematic universe kind of thing, I'm just kind of sick of Claire.
That's good. The show gets sick of Claire too, and she leaves halfway through.
Yes. So I was happy about that. That's what I was going to say. Like, I was really happy that Claire left.
Right. I mean, basically, Luke's issues, whatever's going on with Luke, it causes him to argue with Claire more and more, and it comes to a head where he loses his temper and he punches a hole in the wall. And given Claire's history with domestic violence in her own family, she immediately immediately causes her to take off.
Yeah. She leaves and
not gonna stick around for any more wall punching. Yeah.
She leaves, she gets rid of her apartment, which Luke had moved into, so now he's like living in the barber shop.
He's living out of the barber shop now. No longer has an apartment. I was wondering if Claire was going to come back, and she doesn't come back at all. So it looks like that's done for now, at least, right?
Bobby kind of tries to fill Claire's role,
but then he he bounces.
Cage, but he's trying to calm him down. But he bounces because he has his own problem. His daughter is sick, and he's a kidney match, and so he's going to fly out to help his daughter. And Luke's like, go ahead, do that. What's sad about that is that after the show was over and stuff, I was looking some stuff up for the show notes, and I found out the actor who played Bobby Fish died. So
really, they didn't have anything in the credits. I know the actor who played Luke Cage's dad died because there was like an in memory of that actor.
Maybe I messed that up. I was doing it when I was doing the credits. I might have messed that up.
The actor who played Luke's dad passed away.
And maybe I did mess that up.
I don't know, if Bobby Fish died, why would they have it in memoriam for that guy, but not Bobby Fish? Awkward.
Unless
it's just very, very recent. Yeah, but I think he bounces. The actor probably had other commitments. That's the most likely thing that happened.
Yeah, it's looking like he's still alive, so I messed that up. So it was his dad that died. I thought that had to do with him leaving the show, because I found that out when I was looking up information for the show notes.
The only way they could write an exit for the guy so that he could die is if they knew he was dying in the first place.
Well, they very well could have. I mean, it's the same way they handled the log lady in Twin Peaks, That's
true, but you can obviously tell in those scenes that she was on her deathbed. No, she looked pretty bad in those scenes.
Yeah, but they could have worked something out. He might have had an illness that was just as deadly, but not as debilitating,
Right. Yeah, it's possible.
So I thought that's what would happen, but apparently he didn't. So then hopefully, I guess we'll see him in season 3. So
yeah, hopefully we will.
Because I do like that character. Oh, so that actually makes me feel a little bit better about that then. I'm sad the actor who played his dad died, because that was kind of somewhat left a little unresolved.
That's what happens this season. Several characters just bounce halfway through, and it's other characters come in and they end up getting killed. Piranha, which was a really fun character. He's a businessman working with Mariah to help Mariah secure all these millions of dollars from this plastics deal that she manipulated. He becomes important because he takes control of those assets, and he becomes a target for Bushmaster, and and Luke Cage has to protect him. Ultimately, Luke Cage fails because they get him anyway.
Well, that's his own fault. He leaves him with his dad, and then he bounces instead.
I would say it's inevitable because Luke Cage can't stay on top of somebody 24/7 like that anyway.
But if there was no word of him being at Luke Cage's dad's place, he stayed there, he would have been fine.
I think eventually they would have gotten to him. That's the thing. Like the will was there on Bushmaster's end.
He had the will and the force.
Also, Luke Cage kind of did something stupid where the only reason he left the church was to confront Bushmaster directly, and that just ends up with Luke Cage in the river, almost drowning.
Yeah.
So that was also kind of stupid on Luke Cage's part.
Well, he basically beat Bushmaster, but then Bushmaster got a little underhanded.
Yeah, got a little underhanded with that voodoo and
put some dust in his eyes and knocked him off the bridge. Yeah. But let's see. Since we're talking about Luke Cage and his journey, we're kind of covered a lot of the early developments. He's angry at his dad. He's got these other influences. Life, Claire bounces. He talks to Misty Knight every so often, try to work that stuff, but their kind of stories are mostly separate.
They're mostly separate. Misty is
working together with her stuff. I think we'll get to her next.
Yeah.
But what we do get is, he has an interaction with Foggy Nelson that has to do with the fact that he savagely beat up a, cockroach. Another one of the characters that got killed by Bushmaster.
Another thug. Cockroach is basically just a thug.
And he was beating up his kid, his wife and his kid, and or her kid. I don't know if it was his. And Luke kind of came there, and he was angry, and all his kind of resentment and the chip on his shoulder kind of surfaced, and he just beat the guy almost to death.
Yeah, again, that's another scene where Luke Cage just loses it completely and beats him within an inch of his life. If Claire didn't arrive, like Luke Cage probably would have killed him.
And so Cockroach is demanding a certain amount of money, or he's going to sue him, and it would basically put Luke Cage in jail.
Yeah.
Which Luke Cage could get out of, but then he's on the run again. It's a whole thing. So
which leads to Luke Cage agreeing to do a thing for Piranha, which leads to Luke Cage having to protect Piranha from Bushmaster. That leads
which he fails at, but he was able to get that job opportunity, and he was in mediation for those charges against him, all with Foggy Nelson as his attorney.
Yeah, with Foggy Nelson as his attorney. Yeah.
So that was one of the little cameos they got in there from the broader Netflix Marvel Universe cameos.
Well, I know Foggy is doing the thing Claire is doing, which is he's showing up in all these shows now too. Because he was also in Jessica Jones season 2, the one scene. So.
Well, he works for
the law firm that
he's deeply tied in because of that now, because he's working for that law firm now. Another kind of cameo we had come up there is that, we could bring up Colleen Wing, but that's more with Misty. We'll talk about that later. Danny.
We got the heroes for hire, right?
Which they've been hinting at heavily through this whole season.
Yeah, they've been hinting at.
They keep talking about, I need a hero for hire, like direct hints, subtle hints, all over the place this whole season. But the culmination of that was, I think it was in episode 10, and that's when Danny Rand shows up. And I talked to you and Mike about this. I don't think I talked on the podcast. I think I talked before it, but I felt like they've done more in that one episode to make Iron Fist feel like Iron Fist than in anything else they've done with him so far, by miles and miles.
Again, one of the best
things quite there, but it's
one of the best things about the season is the writers really worked to elevate the level of characterization.
Mm-hmm.
From first season, and I think that went with Iron Fist, because it was Iron Fist with much better writing behind him. So
he's still not quite where he should be.
Yeah, he's still not quite.
He's supposed to be a smart ass. He should be pretty Peter Parker. As Spider-Man cracking wise.
He should be pretty Peter Parker. It's not just bland, boring guy with karate powers.
But they have done a lot to redeem him in this one episode and make him kind of seem more natural. And they did a lot to kind of establish some kind of a working relationship between him and Cage. Further hints at the idea of heroes for hire, which I think they might be pushing for, because they are doing another season of Iron Fist.
Yeah, they are.
I think they already filmed it. It's already done, I think.
I like when DW says, "Yeah, Power Man and Iron Fist."
That has a ring to it.
That has a ring to it. Yeah.
How about it's all like, I got this power by fighting a dragon. It's like, you fought Bruce Lee?
Yeah, you fought Bruce Lee. I like how they have like conversation where Iron Fist is like, okay, you can accept that you're bulletproof. Luke Cage is like, yeah, and you can accept that my fist blows sometimes. It's like, yeah, but you can't accept that I fought a dragon. And Luke Cage is like, oh, hell no. Come on.
And then Danny Rand starts talking about taking him to Kunlun to meet the dragon and stuff.
Yeah.
There's also hints that the monks of Kunlun like get stoned.
Yeah.
When they visit another crossover character that happens in the Danny Rand episode, they run into Turk, who's trying to kind of run a legitimate business now, a head shop.
Yeah. Turk is trying to go legit now, right? I guess but
he still has underworld contacts. He still has info.
I guess Turk got sick of being roughed up by every single hero in the Netflix MCU, right?
By the way, he's the only character that has been in every single season.
Oh yeah, every single season.
He beat out Claire by one. Claire wasn't in one of the seasons. I think it was she wasn't in Punisher. Yeah, I think that was it.
She wasn't in Punisher. Turk was in Punisher. Turk was
so Turk's been in every single one.
Yeah,
he's the undisputed king of the MCU.
Yeah, exactly. We just need Turk to start showing up in the movies.
Yeah.
They can put him in the next Spider-Man movie.
They should just throw him in as almost like an extra.
Yeah.
And have him carrying a bunch of bongs for his head shop, walking down the street, and then a hero runs by and knocks into him, and all the stuff crack, and he's just like, God damn it. That's
the thing. Spider-Man's in Queens. It doesn't make any sense that Spider-Man went right into some of these people.
Yeah. Just the only thing that makes sense is that they just don't want to cross them, and the movie side doesn't want to deal with the TV side.
Yeah, exactly.
So what did you think? I've mostly expressed my opinion about Iron Fist in this, and we've talked about some of the events of the episode.
I thought it was a good episode. I thought whenever they want to make that Heroes for Hire show.
Yeah, so it made it you could watch Danny Rand and not roll your eyes.
And not hate him, right? Yeah, because we have Luke Cage there to counteract his corniness, so.
And he made his corniness more acceptable too. He has more swagger now. He walked into Pop's place and took a seat in the chair and was just very he had swagger when he came in. It's just something he's never had on any of the shows, which he should have. If you see even in the panels, they have a good way of just illustrating him to show that he has swag, and just not in any of the shows until now. He shows a little bit of swagger, and it's fun to watch those two fighting together. I love it when Danny runs behind Luke's back when bullet fire starts coming out. So all that stuff's kind of fun. So yeah, Heroes for Hire series is definitely something I'd be up for. And I have a little bit higher hopes for Iron Fist season 2. I mean, I don't think the new showrunners are I don't remember who they are, but I looked it up and it wasn't too great. So I'm hoping.
Yeah, from what I heard, it wasn't too inspiring, but
it's a step up from Scott Buck, but
not Scott Buck. So cause
yeah,
I've seen a lot of shows. His shows tend to be especially bad.
Yeah. He's like the Uwe Ball of TV.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't have high expectations for Iron Fist season 2, but after this, I'm kind of a little bit more hopeful. I think at the very least that the actor's kind of getting a better sense
Fist
of who
season 1 is still the only Marvel Netflix show I hadn't finished. I still haven't watched past the 3rd episode on that.
The only piece of information for anybody else out there who's doing what Will did and hasn't watched it, the only real piece of relevant information that you need to get from Iron Fist season 1 is that Colleen was working for the Hand and didn't realize that they were as bad as they are. And so the dojo she had and the people she was training were all being being filtered into the Hand. So they were filling up the Hand's ranks. And that was a recruiting mechanism that they were using. And the guy that chopped off Misty Knight's arm was her master in the Hand.
Yeah.
It was the one that she followed and stuff. And
they go through that in the Defenders. The Defenders powers makes that part obvious.
That's the only piece of
Yeah.
information. And you could sum that up in like, about like a, I don't know, 30 second clip. Could sum that up.
Sum that up.
I just did. So you're welcome. There you go. All the information you needed. But yeah, so Danny, when he's brought in, it's not just for a fun little moment. It's, Danny says that he was called by Claire. That's like the only like other kind of reference even really to Claire, I think. Besides, I think his father references him too. But Claire called Danny and said that Luke needed him. And Danny's like trying to teach Luke to be more like centered, to kind of, not be ruled by his anger, to use his anger, but not be ruled by it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so he teaches him a few, coping skills that I don't think necessarily really works all that well for Luke Cage, except just the idea of kind of getting your head above it so you can see the full picture. And that's kind of like the one thing that clicks with Luke Cage. It allows him to kind of maybe get past the chip on his shoulder. And as a result of a lot of the other happenings going on with Mariah's story and Bushmaster's story, Luke ends up kind of like with his father and ends up being able to kind of get through with him and get to the idea that like he doesn't necessarily hate his father entirely.
Right. Yeah, they work through their issues when they're holed up.
They make good groundwork.
But
now, like as you pointed out, the actor's dead, so not sure they can't really follow up on that unless they recast them.
Yeah, they can't.
I don't imagine they will. I
don't imagine they will. I think they're just gonna leave that the way it is.
I think they'll throw in a side note that he passed away. Maybe I could even see them like opening up Luke Cage with him like at his dad's funeral or something.
Yeah, with him, or Luke Cage getting the news,
that
his father passed away,
and then kind of like him putting that to bed himself.
Well, it's interesting. Well, we're going to get to that because Luke Cage season 3, that's going to open at a very interesting place. This goes places at the end of the season. So
should we do Misty Knight before we get to that?
We definitely should.
Yeah, let's do Misty Knight and then we'll get to the end of Luke Cage season 2 and what that sets up for what's going on moving forward with his character.
Basically, Misty Knight, she may have lost her arm, but she is not gonna just retire and collect on disability.
Well,
right?
she did, but then she like backstepped. She was like, I can't do this. I can't be retired.
She has to be working, right? She has to be in the fray. Like, that's her attitude. It's like, she's restless.
And she's got a bit of a chip on her shoulder, too.
Yeah.
She's kind of like, she's not as calm and collective as she was before. We see a few moments that are like what we'd seen with her in season 1 of Luke Cage, where she's kind of like piecing together a crime scene. But it seems like most of the time she just doesn't have a cool enough head to be that way. Like, she's kind of like, she's struggling with it. She's a little angry about the situation with her arm. She's angry, very angry about what came out about her partner in season 1 and how her partner
ended up, being a traitor basically, and how he ended up.
He plays a big part in the season in like flashbacks.
Yeah, he does. And also because like the shit he did still has consequences. Like there's several points where like they're trying to build a case against Mariah and Misty has to get the gun. Because some of the ballistics evidence that she has is tainted by what Scarf did in the past. Because she has ballistics evidence from a case Scarf worked since that was his case and what he did. It's tainted and they can't use it.
That's also why Cockroach was out of prison and was beating on his girl and the kid.
Yeah.
We had mentioned them earlier. That was because it was Scarf's case and like all his shit got overturned because it was, found out that he was corrupt. This combined with the fact that Misty's kind of out of her job is kind of like we see Misty's kind of rival at the police station.
Well,
and
we see
they're like the new blood detectives, basically.
The police chief is being especially hard on her,
Yeah.
He's basically telling her not to work because she's trying to like work the Bushmaster case and stuff. Every time she does something, like the police chief is there to say this is not your case, and if pressing this, we're gonna fire you.
And her rival's just being a straight up bitch, like poking at her.
Oh yeah, just her rival in the department who's actually appointed to work the case. Just keeps mocking her, like just treating her like shit. She's getting jokes from people about her arm.
They must have had like a fun time at the writers' room coming up with ways to make fun of people with one arm.
Yeah, they must have.
Because they're like constant.
Yeah, they're like constant.
I think overall in this season, I didn't like Misty as much as I did in the first season.
Really? Why is that?
She's got more momentum in her story. She's got more to deal with and stuff. Mm-hmm. In the first season, I just don't like her as a character as much. It's not that her story isn't as good, because her story is probably better as far as like what she's going through and what she's trying to do. But, it's just, she's got that chip on her shoulder and she's unfocused.
I don't
she's
blame
kind of
her.
Acting more rashly.
I don't blame her that she has that chip on her shoulder. She lost her arm, and everybody around her, except for Luke Cage, is basically treating her like shit. You know?
I don't blame her for it. I'm just saying, like, I miss the really cold and collected Misty from like the first season.
Right.
Where she was able to really kind of be a bit more calculating and smart about things, and it makes sense why she's not. It's just I kind of miss that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, she was like that because she didn't have all these problems.
Yeah. Like, she just kind of doesn't seem that competent in this season.
Right.
Where she really seemed competent in the last season. Like, there's like two police characters that the Netflix cinematic universe or whatever, Marvel Cinematic Universe thing, have done really well. One is her, and the other one is the DEA agent from Punisher.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing.
Characters seem really smart and on top of
Here's the thing. This leads to another great scene where she goes to Colleen to help get herself centered, to try and help get herself more balanced, basically.
Yeah, that's the introduction of Colleen Wing into this show that we had brought up.
Yeah. And basically she trains with her. Not a big thing. The biggest thing that happens is her and Colleen end up getting into a bar fight together.
Which seemed to be Colleen's actual objective.
Yeah, which seemed to be Colleen's actual objective. And basically, shortly after that, Colleen and Danny Rand set her up with a new arm.
She gets her bionic arm from the comics.
Yeah, she gets her bionic arm from the comics.
Which is from Rand now. It was Stark in the comics, but if she got an arm from Stark, it would have like missiles and and just like all sorts of like, it would allow her to fly. It would,
it would allow her to fly. It'd come with the
Star Trek is so broken in the MCU.
Well, it would come with all that, and then like she'd be like, why the hell do I need missiles? And Tony would come up again because, case of aliens. I was like, what? Because that's what Tony is obsessed with.
So they have like the more in-universe for the Netflix side of things, but also like the more grounded approach of having it come from Rand Enterprises instead of Stark.
Yeah, instead of Stark. Because you don't know Tony Stark, so it wouldn't make sense. It's like, why would Tony Stark send a bionic arm to some random police officer he's never met?
Yeah. She gets that bionic arm and she's using it throughout it. It doesn't seem to be making that much of a difference compared to how she would have fought when she had her both arms. She has more strength, but like she doesn't really necessarily use it that much.
Right.
Throughout the show. It's just almost, for the fans, it's almost more of an aesthetic thing. She got her arm cut off, she gets this robotic arm, and it's just a cool thing. It's aesthetically. She's got a robot arm.
Yes. She's got a robot arm.
But yeah, I mean, is that pretty much it for Misty's story?
That's pretty much it.
Let's dive into how the season ends.
I mean, I guess like the resolution to her story is she gets what she wants, right? At the end, she wants Mariah in jail. She puts Mariah away. Mariah ends up dying, and after Mariah dies, Misty ends up putting Shades away.
Yeah, she put Shades away. She's her boss ended up dying, as we had mentioned before when we talked about Shades and Comanche. Mm-hmm. Her boss's boss basically comes in and says, "Hey, Misty, you should be taking this post."
Yes.
And that's kind of like the end of her story in this season, at least. So yeah, let's talk about how this season ends. So as we mentioned, Misty ended up getting got.
Yep, she ended up getting got. So basically what happens is, without Mariah there in charge, basically all the crime families in New York kind of descend upon Harlem.
So this happens even before,
No, this happens as soon as Mariah gets put in jail.
Yeah, before she dies.
Before she dies. Yeah, they descend on Harlem. They turn it into a war zone, even more so. Mariah makes this big dramatic speech in the courtroom of how without her, she's the only thing holding the tide back, and she makes this dramatic speech about how they need her to be where she is to stop it. And the sad thing about that is that she wasn't lying. She wasn't
lying, but she
exaggerating.
also orchestrated some of the crime.
Yeah, she did because she needed, but like her idea was like she was gonna have the crime families like pay her for like exclusive access. You know, it wasn't going to be the free for all it turned into.
Yes.
Yeah, you know.
So that's kind of her big play to get out of prison. It wasn't to try to like get to show that she was innocent, to say you're going to declare me innocent without me even saying I'm innocent, just because you need me out on the streets. Otherwise, the town's going to be destroyed.
Yeah,
Harlem will be destroyed, and so she's using that kind of as her play. It doesn't kind of go her way. She ends up dying, but before she even dies, like you said, all these crime families are just kind of going crazy, doing their own thing. There's like war breaking out all over the streets, and Luke Cage kind of ends up finding out that
Luke Cage doesn't know what to do. Like, he's kind of at a loss. He's going out there. He's trying to save as many people as he can, but he knows that he can't continue doing that.
He needs to go outside of Harlem.
He needs to go outside. So Luke Cage, after speaking to Shade, Shade shows up and gives Luke Cage some advice. And basically, Luke Cage makes a surprising decision, which is, you know, he has to become a king. He kind of takes over Mariah's spot because he goes and he speaks with the Italians specifically.
Yeah, that's why I said he had to go outside of Harlem. He had to go into the turf of these other people that were warring in Harlem and just treat their businesses the same way he was treating the ones he was going against in Harlem. Like he's like, I've been restricting myself to Harlem, but now you've entered Harlem, so now I'm entering your business.
I'm entering your business.
Over here, and I'm coming in, and there's nothing you can do.
He basically tells her he'll leave her alone, he'll leave her business alone as long as she keeps it out of Harlem. You know.
And the implication is, and we see little bits of it, that's the only one we really see him talking to a crime boss, but we see other implications.
The implication is like he went around and he told this to the others too, but we don't see that.
We see him beating up some of the street level thugs and stuff in those other gangs, but we don't see him actually negotiating with the heads. Only the one of the Italian family.
DW, when he finds out Luke Cage has been negotiating with criminals, DW like gets really disappointed in him. He kind of begs Luke Cage not to go down this path, and he kicks him out of Pop's barbershop.
Yeah, he says that he's going to take a loan and buy the place himself, and that Luke can't talk about his strategies or his business here because Pop's barbershop is supposed to be neutral. It's Switzerland,
yeah, it's supposed to be neutral. So after that, while Luke Cage is going down this path, he gets a surprise because he's contacted by Mariah's lawyer.
Who was also, by the way, he's been Mariah's lawyer since Luke Cage season 1, and has been the lawyer in their whole family for generations going back. But he was also Kingpin's lawyer from Daredevil.
Yeah, he was also Kingpin. You're right.
He's a very like Johnny Cochran-esque.
Yeah, he's very
easy defense lawyer.
He's very sleazy. He has an answer for everything. You notice he's just that slick. Like every charge he has an answer for. He has a counter to.
He's got the Chewbacca defense because he's Cochran.
Yeah, exactly.
You know the Chewbacca defense, right, from South Park?
Yeah.
You know they teach that in law schools.
Is really?
They talk about the Chewbacca defense in law schools. Like it's not literally like how to do the Chewbacca defense. It's like the psychology behind the Chewbacca defense and how that actually applies in a lesser extent to actual cases and stuff. But yeah, so this guy their lawyer he's a Cochran.
But basically he's going through Mariah's will with Mariah's daughter and Luke. And Luke gets the shock of his life because Mariah leaves him the club, Harlem's Paradise, which
is the first time we've seen like kind of a new shade on Mariah's daughter too.
Yeah.
Because before we had seen her. By the way, Mariah's daughter killed Mariah.
Yeah.
We should point that out.
I thought we already did.
No, we mentioned Mariah died, but we didn't mention that her daughter.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Mariah's daughter ends up killing Mariah.
That was Alex was the last straw. When she saw Alex, who was Mariah's assistant, dead, she said, "That's it. I have to kill her." And so she gave her mom a kiss, and she had put like poison in her.
Yeah, she had put poison in her lipstick.
Yeah.
And it causes Mariah to die as she's speaking to Luke Cage. She actually dies in Luke Cage's arms with Luke Cage, saying, I've done enough saving. I'm done. Yeah.
What's interesting is that it seems like Mariah knew that she was dying and that it was at her daughter's hand before she even started like coughing up blood and stuff. Like she kind of picked up on what her daughter had done. they imply that. But
flashbacks where Mariah's talking to her lawyer as she's writing up her will. I mean, yeah, it's obvious she knew she was dying because she's writing up her will with her lawyer, right? So she's bequeathing stuff already. You know, she's just in prison. You know, why would she be doing this unless she had an inkling, right?
Yeah, and what's interesting here also is that she left the club to Luke Cage, but now we see like her daughter, who I was bringing up before I mentioned that she's older. For the first time, she kind of didn't want any part of her mom's business. She ended up killing her mom because of what her mom had done. She should have been like happy, like this is over. I'm done with this.
But she seems kind of put off, right?
Yeah. She's kind of taking a heel turn at this point.
Yeah, she's taking a heel turn.
You can see it on her face when they leave the club to Luke that she is not happy.
She's kind of like, you know, kind of suddenly gets like that's my club.
Yeah, she gets kind of a very vindictive look in her eyes.
Yeah. Luke Cage says it. You know, as Luke Cage is hearing this, we get flashbacks to Mariah and Mariah's reasoning for giving Luke Cage the club in her own words, which is she wants to leave the club to somebody who loves Harlem as much as she does, and that she's hoping that by taking over Harlem's Paradise, that it corrupts Luke Cage. You know, that it corrupts Luke Cage and turns him into somebody like her. You know, that's what she's hoping.
Yeah, and so we see the club. You know, he's no longer welcome to be at Pops as a point of business. He's still welcome there to get a haircut, but that's it.
The lawyer asks him if he's going to take the club, and Luke Cage replies to burn it down, just burn it all down.
But that's not what happens.
He walks away, but then we jump up to the future, and the club is very much not burnt down, and Luke Cage is standing in it.
He's in the owner's box.
He's in the owner's box.
He's got his new suit from Dapper Dan. And we also see, did you notice in the club, Mariah's daughter was there, like kind of like a glammed out dress, looking quite villainous.
Yeah, looking quite villainous, looking like she's up to something, you know?
Yeah, she's a character in the comics too, a villain in the comics as well. So we got her villain backstory now.
We got her reason to hate Luke Cage now, because otherwise she would have no reason to hate Luke Cage, really.
Yeah, and we see Luke Cage, and he's run the club, and he's like the new kingpin. He's got people walking up and whispering in his ears the same way. We've seen happen with Cottonmouth and Mariah before.
Oh yeah, he's a full-on mob boss now, right? Like he's even dressed the part.
Yeah, and the last thing we see, the last kind of like nail in the coffin for.
Well, we see like Misty is in the club too.
Yeah,
she's scoping it out, and she's basically warning Cage, you know, like if he goes down that path, she is going to be forced to go after him.
And he says, "I'm counting on it."
And he says, "I'm counting on it." And then the last nail in the coffin, the last thing that suggests that Luke Cage has almost fully changed for the worse is Sugar informs Luke Cage that Claire wants to see him, and Luke Cage tells him to send her away.
Yeah.
So
that's kind of like the point, and so it ends on this kind of note with him in a position of power, considered seeming to be corrupted. In his suit, looking over Harlem's Paradise in the same way like Cottonmouth did at the beginning of season 1.
Yeah, in the beginning of season 1. So Luke Cage is seeming to have taken over Harlem crime now, which is a very bold ending for the season, because I was like, wow. I was like wondering, like, are they going to go there? They actually went there. It's like, okay, well, that's balls. I admire
we haven't seen him actually do anything bad.
Well, no, obviously.
But he's like looking the part at the very least.
Obviously he's doing this thing where he thinks that by putting himself in the role, by taking it over, he can help. He can make it better. He can make it less worse than it would be. Right? There's a conflict with him where he kind of feels like he's obligated to put himself in this position because it will be better under him than it would be under somebody else.
He's no longer the hero of Harlem, which, right. I guess we should bring that up kind of as an aside, because we've kind of finished the discussion of the show, but, what did you think of the whole, like, Harlem's Hero app?
I don't know. I thought it was silly. I thought, okay.
It was just kind of a funny thing to bring up every so often.
It's a funny thing to bring up. It was like a plot device, right? Bushmaster even tells his henchmen to check the app, you know, when he's looking for Luke Cage, you know?
He's like asking Danny Rand, like, how do you know where I am? He's like, I checked the Harlem's Hero app. And then DW the whole time keeps looking at Lee. It's like, I told you should have copyrighted that.
When Mariah killed Bushmaster's family, like, that was, my jaw dropped. And that was the point where I said, she has to go. If she, like, slips away at the end of the season like she did season 1, like, after doing something like that, I'm gonna be pissed.
Yeah,
like,
when she burned Anansi alive.
I was like, she cannot be allowed to get away with this in this season. I don't care. It's like, damn.
Even with how brutal Bushmaster had been with all the severed heads on display and stuff, it's like...
Yeah. At least those people weren't fully innocent, you know? Like,
yeah.
Cockroach and Piranha weren't, like, exactly clean. You know?
But then there was also that...
but there was the one, yeah.
The Atris Plastics guy.
Like I said, Bushmaster wasn't entirely sympathetic because he was brutal, but the difference between him and Mariah is Mariah turned out to be genuinely evil, and Bushmaster wasn't evil. He was just somebody who had been,
he's a criminal because to get into his position before he even came to Harlem, he was like a crime boss.
Yeah, he was a crime boss. He was a criminal, but his whole thing was like he was deeply hurt, you know, and he wanted revenge. Mm-hmm. He was lashing out because he was dealing with all this pain, and he thought the only way to exercise the pain was to kill Mariah.
Right. So, any final thoughts about the season?
Yeah, A+. This is one of the best seasons of the Netflix Marvel shows so far, I think. They really knocked it out apart. This is like Daredevil season 1 levels to me.
I had a few little niggling things about it that I didn't like.
There's a few niggling things
that would make me not rank it as high, but the one thing I'm definitely going to give it is that Luke Cage season 1 had that massive tail drive at the end.
Yeah.
And this did not at all. This kept it up through this season.
Also, like, again, much better characterization.
Yeah, great villain this time with Bushmaster.
The characters were more fleshed out this time. Great villain with Bushmaster. Great villain with Mariah. She really stepped up. In season 1...
They redeemed Iron Fist to some extent.
Yeah. In season 1, Mariah wasn't much more than a corrupt politician, you know, so...
Yeah. So there's a lot to love here, definitely. I'd say it's pretty high up on my Marvel Netflix list, but not as high for me as it was for you, I think.
Okay,
There's still some issues I had with it that I'd rank it a little bit lower, but oh man, such an improvement over, like, I was worried going into.
I was worried. I wasn't expecting this to be as good as it was based on season 1. Mm-hmm. You know, just based on season 1 because season 1 was like, this is pretty good, and then it's, oh, this is bad.
That's such a nosedive. It was just bad.
Yeah.
But like not so here. So I mean, it seems like the showrunners kind of paid attention to the criticisms and really kind of addressed those, and they got rid of the Judas bullet in, you know, an okay way. They got rid of
and they didn't introduce any new McDuff. They didn't introduce any new kryptonite for, you know, Luke Cage.
Yeah, they barely mentioned Diamondback, just a few times.
Yeah,
but only really like how it related to the relationship between Cage and his dad and stuff.
Yeah.
And so they kind of were able to get through a lot of that stuff. So it's definitely a big step up from Luke Cage season 1, a massive step up from Iron Fist, and a big step up from the Defenders as well. I'd say I don't think it's as good as Punisher, just talking about the recent stuff, and I don't think it's as good as Jessica Jones season 2. But it's up there.
I think this is better than Jessica Jones season 2. I really thought Jessica Jones, I don't know, I really thought that was weak, but...
I'll disagree with you on that one. To each their own, but I definitely feel like it was it was what it needed to be, and that was good. It was better than I thought it was expected.
Right.
So that's it. So here's what's coming up in the week ahead. By the time this podcast is available on Friday, July 6, 2018, 4 more shows hitting Netflix: Sacred Games, Anne with an E, which is their adaptation of Anne of Green Gables. It's the 2nd season for that. Free Reign and Samantha with an exclamation point. Then on Saturday, July 7, 2018, Mr. Sunshine comes to Netflix, another one. Sunday, July 8, 2018, Sharp Objects. This is coming to HBO. It's from the same production company that made Big Little Lies on HBO. So it's another mini-series kind of thing, like just a self-contained 1-season thing. Tuesday, July 10th, 2018, The Outpost comes to the CW. This one I'm actually really looking forward to. This is from some of the creators of like Stargate SG-1 and stuff, and it's a fantasy series on the CW. So keep your eye out for that. July 10th, The Outpost.
The Outpost, okay.
Wednesday, July 11th, 2018, Harlots comes back to Hulu, and the debut of Bobcat Goldthwait's Misfits and Monsters, which we had talked about on our our summer preview podcast is coming to True TV. So I'd like to talk about that on the podcast, maybe not right away, maybe at some point, but we'll have to figure out how you can watch it. True TV is a little bit tricky.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, maybe it'll be on Hulu or something. We'll have to see where that goes. I'll look into that and try to see if there's a way you can watch it. But it's a half-hour anthology series. Each episode is self-contained, and they're only half-hour long. So. And then on Thursday, July 12th, 2018, The Disappearance comes to WGN, who is somehow still making shows after saying they were done making shows. And there's more coming to that network too, so it's not just that. But
okay.
Next week, Will and I are going to be talking about Glow Season 2. I'm about 3 episodes in. How far are you right now?
1 episode.
Yeah, you're 1 episode, so we're going to be talking about that when we get there. Short episodes, episodes like 26 minutes apiece, so we should be through it and able to talk about that next week. If we're not, we'll talk about what we've seen up to. You can reach me on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. You can reach Will. He is at Voxel Hero. You can check out our Facebook page and our YouTube channel, as well as our site, thetotalscreen.com. You can subscribe to this podcast through any major podcast client like iTunes or Pocket Cast. And the entire backlog of our podcast is available on our YouTube channel. So thank you everybody for listening, and we'll be talking about Glow next week. Bye.
Bye.
If you would like to reach out to us and make a comment, send an email to contact@thetotalscreen.com. Stay tuned to The Total Screen for the very best.